I'm Paul Davis. I'm the product manager for all of our hardware and network products. So that includes sensors, wall controls, gateways, all of the various elements that make up our sensor control network. So everything from our roadmap and strategic planning, and also business engagements with partners like Signify.
Okay, and I'm Mike Gershowitz. I'm the Vice President of Solutions Engineering at Enlighted. And my role is to make sure that any gaps that we have between the products that we manufacture ourselves and what's necessary to make the luminaire of the system function are properly bridged. So we do that in part through an eco-partner program. We partner up with driver manufacturers such as Signify. We make sure the technology works together well, complements each other together well. And if there are gaps and we need to do further R&D, we coordinate, my group coordinates that activity between our development folks and our product folks, as well as our partners, to make sure that your experience is a first-class, out-of-the-box success rate.
That's great. So before we dive into the program, I want to let you know that we're going to start with this panel session for about 30 minutes or so. So if you have any question during this time, please hold your question until the very end. We'll get about 15 minutes of Q&A. And then after that, you are free to roam around the hall and check out the product that we have on display. And then also the Paul and Mike will be able to answer any question that you may have. So with that said, tell us about Enlighted. I know that you guys are now part of the Siemens family. I'm sure that's pretty exciting. So tell us a little bit about what has changed and what are the things that really we should know for those people either watching it online or those who are in the room.
So Enlighted has a 10-year history initially as a startup company founded in Silicon Valley, focused on lighting controls and broadening it to the larger building IoT space. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But last July, Enlighted was purchased by Siemens. So we are now part of the Siemens Smart Infrastructure Group, which includes the various building technologies like HVAC control, fire alarm systems, as well as part of the specific energy business. So we are still operating as an independent entity focused on the lighting controls and moving to the broader building IoT space, but also under the Siemens umbrella and working to integrate our system with the other Siemens systems. So I expect over the course of time you'll see more closer collaboration between what Enlighted is doing and then the broader Siemens messaging around smart buildings and building IoT.
Anything you want to add, Mike?
No, I think Paul covered it quite well. The only thing I would say is, again, the autonomous aspect in terms of Enlighted and Enlighted's mission continues forward. If anything, I think with a better global perspective because of Siemens' large reach. As a pre-IPO, in the past we were somewhat funded limiting, so to speak, and the net result is we focus very much on North America. I think now there's a lot of emphasis on what we're doing worldwide, European, and I think that'll come out also in the discussions about two-wire and Dolly and D4I.
I think that's where my colleague from Eindhoven will be especially interested because now that you guys have more of a global focus. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I got to get this question out of the way because I'm sure many of you in the audience was kind of wondering, for those who remember 2 years ago, May 10th, when you guys mentioned about the IoT Ready Alliance. And we got to get it out of the way and say, hey, what's going on with that? And then what has changed and what prompted the new, direction you guys are taking by joining here today?
Yeah, so a year ago at this show, we announced the first version of the IoT Ready standard. And the goal with IoT Ready was to bring some standardization around the interface between the sensor and the luminaire, both electrically as well as physically. Our CEO at the time was very much focused on being able, even if it just means putting a socket or putting the connectivity potential into a light fixture before it goes into the ceiling so that you don't wind up with what he was calling a dumb solution. So that was really the goal with IoT Ready. We launched the first version of the standard, and what we also found though was you don't want to have too many standards out there, and so an agreement was made to work with the Zaga Alliance group and to really try to focus on just having one specific mechanical and defined interface around getting sensors into light fixtures. Now, Zaga has already had some success with what they've been doing in the outdoor lighting space, and we're now a member of that group and are actively participating in creating the standard for an indoor luminaire socket interface. So it's something that we firmly believe is going to be necessary, because it really, for lighting OEMs, it can take the mystery out of, what should they be doing physically, how should they be trying to integrate sensors into fixtures, and I think is really going to be able to open up the market for a lot of folks.
I'd like to add the comment that actually the last session I was just at, which was the Zaga presentation, the new Zaga, the same topic came up. Soleil, part of our organization, did a wonderful job of addressing it. But the key takeaway here is that Enlighted's concern in this area is for the benefit of the industry and for the benefit of the customers. So we don't want to get ourselves into an NIH situation, or we were there first, we're better, whatever. The bottom line is we absolutely need to have these standards. If you look at what was going on a year or 2 years ago, we didn't have the D4I. The whole notion of using dolly within the luminaire was very different. Zaga at that point of time really wasn't addressing the needs that we felt needed to be addressed. I think if we at least had a little part of stimulating the development, I think now is the right time for us all to come into alignment. And the end objective here is being able to make sure that the end users, their experience is as positive as possible. So it's great that the luminaire manufacturers will be able to have their fixtures be sensor ready and not have to worry about what sensor gets specified. We'll fight that battle based on the capabilities of our sensors. May the best sensor win, but the bottom line is at least let's get that work done at the OEM level so the fixtures are manufactured on factory quality control, and then the end user gets the benefit of what standardization brings.
Now, you mentioned about the sensor ready. I just want to take a moment for those who are not familiar with that terminology. Sensor ready is actually a digital protocol, which to me, in the layman's terms, is laying down the digital foundation for the future of connected lighting. And I think that we have some of these, the colleagues here who kind of paved the way, Peter Dinan there, Shrees and Al Marble and many others.
Oh, working with them.
And of course, yes,
Yeah.
I think it's a
We have a little part.
so I think the point is that it's a collective effort. Right?
Yeah.
We cannot do it ourselves. We need to work with a partner like you guys to help to make that digital transformation a part of the standards. Otherwise, we're all speaking in different languages. Instead of common language in terms of data exchange, data storage, power metering, and so on, now we can all access the same information in the drivers and make that happen. So I think that that's really kind of very, I would say that is very glad to hear that, because now not just the Enlighted, but also the DIIA, the ANSIs are kind of embracing the whole, the digitization using the DALI interface. So with that in mind, I want to maybe look back a little bit in terms of, without this, what are the challenges? What are the kind of the common problems that you see with the connected lighting, and how you feel that that can be better addressed with the D4I, which I would like to ask you to expand on that a little bit, because not many of you know about the D4I. That was only mentioned earlier this month as well.
Yeah, so I think the important thing that the D4I is addressing is, how do we look at dolly just from an intra-luminaire perspective? So really between the sensor and the driver, and how do we exchange information between those two devices to the benefit of the whole luminaire? So Robert mentioned the energy metering, but there's also provisions in there, first of all, for powering the sensor, which for us is the most important part, and that was a big part of Sensor Ready and why the two companies started working together, I'll say 5 years ago? 5 years ago? Yeah, okay. So that's probably, was priority number one. But now what we're seeing is the standardization around configure information, other diagnostic capabilities to be built into the driver, and in a standardized way now our sensors can go in, can look at that information, report that back through the system, and be able to indicate faults, also be able to help with just the configuration of our system, so that when a sensor gets plugged into a light fixture, it can go to the driver, it can know what are the capabilities of the fixture I'm in, what kind of fixture am I in, and how is it behaving. So I think it's a huge step forward for us, and it's to the benefit of, really to the end customer as well, because it really simplifies and then allows for better diagnosis of issues as they happen, and is really it's really a great step forward, I think.
And I would comment, the main difference that I've seen happen is, 2 years back or so, I was, arguing in favor of why dolly made a lot of sense for the last 6 inches. And that was the intra-luminaire, what we needed to do, talking between the sensor and the driver. And what's changed significantly is a very small step, but what's been done with the whole DIA and the D4I, we're talking about dolly using that well-known, well-established protocol on just that last little piece of communication, leave the rest of the network to the sensors and all that other backbone stuff. And by doing that, by adding the power supply unit, we suddenly have enabled a very powerful set of capabilities and a very cost-effective set of capabilities. And the other thing I would comment, Robert, you asked what was the pain point, I think, with our customers. If I had a nickel for every wiring error issue, when you get involved with more than 2 wires, think about it. 2 wires, you can put them in either way.
Or
So
custom cables, too.
Or custom cables. We don't enjoy having as many SKUs as we have, well, Paul doesn't.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, think about it. 2 wires, they can go in either way. There's only one possible wire error, and that's easy to see because the sensor doesn't light up. It has no power. You left your 2 wires or one of the 2 wires off. So that, if nothing else, to the fixture manufacturers, to the field service people, tremendous, tremendous benefit for something that really is, in the end, you say, obvious. Why not?
And I think that you mentioned about the simplicity. I think I cannot emphasize strongly enough that 2-wire solution. It's easier for the people at the factory. But also, I think that from the end user standpoint, maybe they don't appreciate the 2-wire, but I think something I want to understand and realize is that with these light fixtures, LED light fixture in particular, you're talking about the light fixture will be, once they're installed, will be there for a long time, 5 years and 10 years, right? Technology has evolved so much to the point that, who knows, by that time everybody was sitting in the self-driving car. So lighting is no exception to that. So why don't you take advantage today by having a digital driver today, so they can leverage that capability. And then as people start to be able to come up with a new innovative way to harness that potential, that is what has to happen today. Otherwise, you put the light fixture, you may miss the boat in a way, from that standpoint. Now, don't get me wrong, because I think there are all those who are very cost conscious, of course, but I think that you have to really consciously make that decision up front, understand you're laying the foundation. So the future, in a way, I don't want to use future proof, but in a way it is, right? You get a digital foundation, you get a sensor, you can do all the cool stuff.
Right.
Yep.
Both today and then the cool stuff we haven't figured out how to do yet.
Right.
In future generations of sensors.
Right, and then speaking of the cool stuff, so tell us a little bit about something that's kind of exciting for you guys for the Light Fair. I know that you had some pretty big announcement on this new product.
Yeah, so our real big announcement on the lighting front was, 2 things I guess I would comment. One is, for the first time, Enlighted is supporting the 2-wire interface across our whole portfolio of sensors. So this is something new for us. So high bay, outdoor, it opens up larger portfolio of applications, and part of that is enabled by partners like Signify that now have a much larger portfolio of higher wattage outdoor solutions. So that I think is going to be a big plus for both companies going forward. And then the second real big lighting feature that we're talking about this week is the tunable light capability, and we actually have a fixture on display in booth with the new sensor and driver and stuff. And Mike, I'll let you talk about that since you were did a lot of the heavy lifting there. So
dolly Type 8, so basically it goes back. Signify has, I guess you've now made major announcements, so the product is publicly known. But again, it just shows that the economies that happen, a single driver, 2-channel output, digital control, so there's no ambiguity what color temperature I've set, what brightness I want. And again, with our sensor technology, it's easily expansible. We had previously the SR capability, and adding the Type 8 was relatively trivial in terms of firmware upgrades, and it could even be deployed to the units that are out in the field. Now, of course, the driver needs to be changed, but we are just tremendously pleased. As a matter of fact, we have a demo at a booth. Feel free to come by and take a look. But understand, the limiting factor of that demo is the fact that our little wall switch controller kind of goes through discrete steps. If you look at it operating under the normal control scenarios, the color tuning, or the white shifting between CCTs is indistinguishable. So you have this continuum of color, continuum of brightness, and it's just, really a fantastic solution.
And I want to maybe kind of bring it down a little level so that, for those who do not know about the technology, they can understand the impact to the end user. Because here at Signify and Advanced, that's the brand name for the Xitanium SR Flex Tune. We like to talk about color tuning, we like to talk about, digital control, but what does that really mean to the end user? I think that's really the most important part. How do they benefit from that? And there are two specific examples I can think of based on the conversation we had before. In one situation is about the classroom. The teacher obviously have these kids, and they can now using the color tuning to send a visual cue. I think that's very important to recognize. The visual cue is a new dimension that lighting can bring to our everyday lives. There are reports out there talking about, for example, productivity improvement, the mood and so forth. But I think that's kind of hard to quantify, especially when we talk to a lady from the PNNL, for example. She did a webinar on that. But she said that, Robert, the thing that made the color tuning so important is to give the color, the visual cue for the students, for example. So the teacher, she used the example of this teacher afternoon with the kids, jumping, bouncing all over the classroom. Okay, I need to calm down. So you can use the color to say, hey guys, warm color temperature, time to go to read, right? So it's not just turning the lights on or off. You have that dimension that you can use to convey the message to the people in the room. Same thing with the hospital, right? You have the patient, instead of the warm color temperature, 6,000 Kelvin, now you have maybe it's about 3,000. Okay, you get naturally you kind of respond to that sort of environment differently, and I think that's the thing that with the Flex Tune system, which provides you with not only a wireless control as Enlighted and can demonstrate in their booth, but also in terms of simplicity. Right, simplicity, and last but not least, I think this is the most critical. I encourage all of you who are in this room to take a look at our side-by-side comparison. Is that we have the preciseness in terms of controlling the dimming light intensity as well as color temperature. So it's not just the analog. Imagine you have two slider switch. Trying to figure out exactly what color temperature is across different rooms, especially in a large conference room. I'm sure that's going to be very frustrating for the lighting specifier. So I think that we're ushering into the age of digital lighting control with the Xitanium SR Flex Tune at the heart of the whole system. And then with the digital interface, you can now plug and play with different control. And then of course, I Signify also offer the Flex Tune module as well. So we have that flexibility that was not available before. So anything you want to add?
In Enlighted, we're calling it really, it's human-centric lighting, because it is about the people that are in the room and the benefits that they realize from the tunable light solution. And we have a brochure and more information, as Mike was saying, come by the booth, see the demo, see what we're doing, working with one of our lighting partners. But it's another real big step forward. And I think what we're trying to do by working with Signify is make it as easy as possible for OEMs to do that integration, to have, like you say, the consistent lighting, color temperature across a room so that you don't see these discontinuities and things like that, to really give a good end user experience.
Yeah, and the comment I'd offer as well is that tunable white, the notion of what's been going on in tunable white, it's gestated about the right amount of time. It's probably 5 or 6 years or so that it's been kicking around in the industry. Things have changed. The cost of LEDs have dropped. That was one of the limiting factors in the past. There were a lot of unknown to luminaire manufacturers, and certainly the drivers or absence of drivers was, a factor, because you generally bought twice as much driver as you needed. That's all changed now, and what we're seeing is a tremendous uptake, in terms of the number of OEMs that we're working with that are looking at tunable white, or actually in manufacturing of tunable white solutions. It's happening now, and I expect, I haven't walked the show floor yet, but I expect probably everybody has tunable white in their booth, or is talking about tunable white, in whatever way they think it's going to fit. But I think going back to what Robert's point was initially, this is not about the medical benefits or what's been proven with science. It's the user experience. And we know that the user experience, whether it's in the classroom or hospitality, people see it, people like it, people want it, and more importantly, it seems like people will pay for it, a small premium, but they're specifying it. So it's happening now, and we're excited to be, right there as it's coming out, ready to go ahead and support the needs.
Now, in addition to tunable wire, maybe you can talk a little bit for the indoor connected lighting application. Is something else that having a digital driver like Xitanium that can provide that was not, that couldn't be done before? So help us to understand that, I'll call it the last mile. I mean, even though we're looking at the components.
Mike's last 6 inches is
Last six inches, yeah.
as he calls it.
So yeah, let me go ahead, I'll address that one. So the main point I would say, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that we now have information about the manufacturer's use of the driver and the luminaire. Next to wiring errors, the next biggest problem we deal with are drivers that are programmed to the wrong current level and don't work properly with the LED sources, or things that get retrofitted in the field and people are trying to figure out what they need to program it to be. We try to address that, and we actually have addressed that within our sensors. We have that manufacturing data available, but somebody has to load it. And then if they're programming the drivers, well, now there's 2 loading steps. So very similar to what we talked about before about these redundancies, what we see as a wonderful step over here is that if the driver becomes a repository of all that information, we can go ahead and the sensor can pick up what we need from the driver, could relay it back to our system, and our system, in addition to setting itself up properly, could be doing ongoing health monitoring. So for example, if the power level is inappropriate for that fixture, that driver power level, we know something is wrong, whether it's a hardware malfunction, wiring error, whatever, and we can flash that back. You have 5,000 luminaires in the building, or whatever the case may be. It's kind of handy to the service folks to know, hey, they have something they need to deal with. The other aspect I would say, and this is kind of unselling Enlighted, again, for the benefit of the customer, is if energy metering is an important thing, using this digital communication interface gives the ability for the energy metering to be on the driver. And if we think about it, Enlighted had to develop a product. I was involved in the development of it, and I wish we didn't have to develop it. We call it the control unit, and its function in life is to go ahead and to turn the light on or off completely, because some of the older 0 to 10 drivers did not shut off when you dimmed them to 0, and to meter energy. Well, now with the digital interface, you can shut the drivers off by sending the arc power command to 0. The driver goes off, or at least the LED goes off. And again, depending upon the model of driver, optionally you can have hardware energy metering. So what we've done, we've taken cost out of the system for luminaire manufacturers that are making these streamlined. If you've seen any of these linear, these linear pendants with a really small on the inside, it's one less box to put inside. In some cases, the box doesn't fit no matter how small we make it. So I think realistically, all of this stuff, it's just moving in the direction of benefit, benefit, benefit to the end customers, the end users, and we're happy to be there.
One thing you forgot, Mike, was the control unit also powers the sensor, too. So that was the other big.
You're right. The PSU.
Yeah, the other big piece, which is having that power supply capability built into the driver as well. Very big. I mean, as we work, we're seeing more and more driver manufacturers also in Europe now are catching on to what was done with the SR system, and we expect that that's just going to be a feature that drivers will have going forward.
Something I want to add is that when you're talking about the IoT connected lighting, something I heard from another gentleman in the IoT world, and I thought it's really profound, and I want to kind of share that with all of you, is that back in the days before everything is connected, they said the human being is a sensor of machine experience, meaning that you see something broken, you, the human being, is the one to talk about it and try to send somebody to fix it, right? But now everything's turned around, is that machine now is the sensor of human experience. And what I mean by that is really that now you have a machine embedded just about everything, the cars, the phones, even refrigerators, right? Or light bulb for that matter. And then they can send information so that you can use it, like you said, remotely monitor and diagnose, and who knows what else they can come up with. But having that digital foundation in day one helped to make sure that you have that right path moving forward. I think that's super important. I think that's why we're kind of in a way that we're building, or we're walking on the path that are trailblazed by those from Signify, from SR partners to kind of make that happen. Because not one size fits all, but I think that we come to the point with Signify through its innovation, the leadership, and also the fact that we have economy scale globally to source the parts and so forth to make that more affordable than ever before. I think that's one of the key points I want to get across as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you think is the future? And you have to kind of look in the crystal ball now that standardization is coming around, embracing the like you mentioned about the DIA, for IoT. So what is your outlook in the industry for the connect lighting, whether that's indoor or outdoor?
Well, I mean, my big push going forward is going to be to add more capabilities to our sensors. So, the position of our sensors in the lights is very ubiquitous in any infrastructure, and so part of the roadmap going forward is to really use our network as part of a platform for building IoT or smart buildings. Be able to add more sensor capabilities, whether it's doing things like being able to sense air quality in a room, noise level in a room, all of these things that can have more human benefits to the occupants of the building, and be able to get more information about how the building is doing. So that's a big push for us because again, once we have that sensor in the light fixture, where it's positioned, and there's a lot of things that we have, continuously have customers come to us with all kinds of interesting ideas if they only had a sensor that could do this, up in the ceiling.
And I think what I'd like to add, because that really covers where the sensor technology may go, but on the lighting side of the equation, my crystal ball talks to me about this third heartache that I have, which revolves around emergency and emergency lighting, and the cost and the problems that does. I think our European companions have done a very good job on emergency, and by that I mean through the Dolly, I think it's the 202 spec or whatever, but bottom line is, they have mechanisms there that they can test the emergency systems and do it automatically, do it on an ongoing basis. Now, needless to say, we're actively involved in Europe. We are working through those solutions with partners that are already in place with the reporting along with the necessary legal requirements. But the main thing is, to me, the exciting part is how can we bring that technology here to the States? Because if I had a nickel for every 924 device, and those that know emergency know about 924 and 924 heartache, here in the States, it's a very manual and very confused process. And I see where the 2-wire and the Dolly has a good part of the solution for that. And I look forward to being able to deploy that stateside using our sensor technology, the wireless technology, combined with the 2-wire, combined with what has already been developed.
And I think I want to give a shout out to our Bodine colleague here because we work very closely with them on that. So I'm sure that we'll be talking about how we can leverage the connectivity, not just for the lighting, but also for emergency lighting as well. So I want to ask you another question is that, Signify has the Advanced brand, which is, well known in the industry. So for those who have been using Advanced, what kind of message you want to send to them now that we're sitting here in the same room talking about partnership, talking about, leveraging the same common standards. So what kind of message you want to let them understand and walk away at the end of this panel session today?
I think product-wise, I think it's important to recognize that, Enlighted has both the 0 to 10 solution, the 1 to 10 solution, as well as the 2-wire solution now across the whole portfolio. So, we have much more flexibility in terms of how we work with OEMs based on what solutions you're using today, and then to provide you with a roadmap, going forward to take advantage of the more advanced driver capabilities as they come online. So, I think that's really important for that I talk to. They've got a set solution now, and they don't want to have to move their whole portfolio of lighting solutions all at once. So that's I think a big benefit we offer.
Anything you want to add to that, Mike?
No, the only comment I would make is that, again, we work with multiple driver suppliers. We try to be agnostic and not bias our customers. Each one has their own favorite for whatever reasons, and that's fine. But I think, again, the Advanced product line and what Philips and now Signify are doing, have done, they're recognized as world leaders, both in the technology, the quality. They have product that can be depended upon. And for those OEMs that have gone with the Signify product, I think in general, I get a lot less, inquiries and problems with compatibility or performance or failures, just because, again, they do a good job. They're pros, they know what they're doing. And I don't hesitate if a customer comes to me and says, hey, we're thinking of this Advanced driver, the Signify driver. I have no hesitation saying, yeah, that's a good choice, okay?
Music to my ear. Thank you.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you this last question then before turning to the audience for Q&A is what are the challenges ahead, and also more specifically, how can Signify help to address that, move things forward? Is there something that, we have all of the, executives from Eindhoven and also the folks from Rosemont, and basically we have the whole team here, right? So I think that, we can make things happen. Look at the success of SR, right, over time. So what are the things that you want us to see happening next? You have the full room of people all ears ready to make that happen.
Well, you go ahead and start.
I was going to say, I'm going to put it along the combination of tools and managing SKU proliferation. So to the point that we now have the programmable, the simple set, and things like that, it's fantastic because it minimizes having too many SKUs and too much confusion by the manufacturers. But I think the tools still have a ways to go in terms of tools that are easy to use, tools that are not temperamental. So basically, you just want to improve that side of the experience. I think it has a great starting point, but I think there needs to be further work in those areas to, again, work on minimizing the number of SKUs, how many packages can do the different jobs and be selected for that, and how easy is it to use those tools on the factory floor.
Yeah, because, I mean, really what I see happening is, developing a lighting solution for an OEM is going to become a much more advanced process rather than putting a driver and an array of LEDs in place and wiring the thing up and shooting it off. There is going to be this configuration and control step, and even, one thing we haven't even really talked about is things like security, when you start talking about connected systems and things like that. I mean, that's a whole other topic we could get into. But these are all things I expect we'll be cooperating on to make sure what we're trying to do is make it easier for the OEMs to go build these more advanced features into their products.
And I think that actually we have a pretty cool demonstration by my colleague here to show you in terms of how to make things easier from a configuration standpoint. But with that said, I think we're running out a little bit of time, so I'd like to kind of turn it to the audience, so feel free to ask questions that you may have for these two gentlemen or for myself. So feel free, you want to pass around the mic. Just raise your hand and then we'll pass the mic over to you.
Is he allowed to ask a question?
Yeah, maybe not. I have a question. So you have spoken about the redundancy, right? Getting rid of redundancy. I think you have well phrased that it's a benefit to do the last 6 inches in a very cost-effective way, right? I like that. But now you're part of a bigger infrastructure, right? Siemens smart buildings, right? And when you think about redundancy, you guys have done a great job in making lighting completely connected, right? You have done the IoT on lighting. So now what's in your view redundant at Siemens that have perhaps also technology that wants to make smart buildings, right? And so you come now, lighting is already connected, so maybe there's redundancy, right?
You're just saying redundancy with other systems?
On Siemens, so maybe my view is you have taken over Siemens, right? Instead of Siemens have taken over.
Careful there.
There's a limit of what can be said on a recorded session.
What I would say is that, and I was making this comment before, is having our sensors in a position in the lights being powered is such a strong position for us going forward. And so maybe, taking over the Siemens piece is a little strong way of putting it, but we do see lighting as a key foundation to building out that IoT network. And we're, a little over 9 months, 10 months into the acquisition at this point, and we're still working on how we fold roadmaps together and systems together and products together. And like I was saying earlier, I think that over the coming years, we're going to see a lot more of how lighting and the sensory network and that connected piece goes beyond just lighting and goes to really truly connecting up the building. And whether that's an Enlighted driving Siemens or how that exactly works, I think is still to be determined. But that is the vision, very clearly.
Yeah, and what I'd add to that is the fact that our technology is less about a lighting control system and more about a sensor network, where one of the apps it can do is the lighting control. The reason we're in the luminaires was basically for power and position. The luminaire was a convenient place to power the sensor, and since wherever there's light, there's people, wherever there's people, you want to have some degree of monitoring, control, whatever, to make the environment better. So we've got the position, we're throughout the building. So I think overall, we'll have to take our time working through the Siemens equation, who's leading what. But I think the folks at Siemens are pretty smart folks, and I think they understand that the industry and the customers won't tolerate redundancy. So ultimately, we see paths that we can integrate this and wind up with some very good outcomes.
Good question.
Any other questions? Pretty quiet bunch here. Yep. There's one more.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. My name is Holland van Es. We met in Sunnyvale last year.
Yep.
You had a nice announcement, I think it was last week, on Enlighted 1. Basically stepping away from network controls and going back into bare basics, room-based controls. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and also the reasons why?
Yeah, so I'd be happy to talk about that. So Enlighted 1, yes, it is a room-based control system. And really the goal behind Enlighted 1 is to really offer a stepping stone to a connected and an IoT lighting system. Enlighted 1 is actually shipping with the exact same sensor hardware that we ship when we ship a connected lighting or an IoT solution, but it is a simple way of using literally the little wall switch that we have in a laser to go in and create a code-compliant lighting solution, a room-based lighting solution, and to do that at a different price point and a different capability in the market than what a full connected lighting solution has. So if you can imagine the contractor, somebody whose job it is to finish a code-compliant lighting solution, and then, okay, I've done my work. Now it's up to the occupant of the building to say, hey, I want to take advantage of the other features that are available in the Enlighted system. That becomes an upgrade where you add gateway, you add the network connectivity, but you don't have to swap out the hardware. And that we see as a big way of enabling the market. For us, it's all about getting more sensors out there, having that capability. So that's what we're really trying to do with Enlighted 1, is to be able to say, you don't have to make a decision about an advanced connected or an IoT lighting system today. You can get a code compliant system in, and then you can work the upgrade path later when the time is right, and adjust it to the level of capabilities you're looking for. So whether you're looking for something that is a connected system where you're doing a little bit more advanced lighting control, maybe some time-based control, doing some energy monitoring, or the full-scale IoT solution where you're looking at space planning and what's the building occupancy in different areas of the building, or moving to real-time location services, things like that. All of that, the capability is in the sensors, and it just becomes a matter of upgrading the network to take advantage of that. So that's the real message behind Enlighted 1, is an entry point to a much larger connected and IoT solution.
Really connected for the masses.
Yes.
Sounds like a fantastic idea. I'm sure I heard something around this room like that as well.
Yeah, I think I've seen something in this room that might lend itself to that.
But thanks for joining in that space. It's a perfect idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
So actually, I want to follow up on the Enlighted ones. Would you say that that solution particularly geared for those who were kind of on the fence, right? We talk about connected lighting can be complicated. You give them sort of a nice entry point. Using swimming pools as example, shower end of the swimming pool. If you want to, hey, I want to go into deeper now with a full connected, power meter and remote diagnostic. Do you feel that there's still a large population out there that you're trying to, I would guess, capitalize with this kind of solution?
Yeah, I mean, that's really where the bulk of the market is today. I mean, Enlighted has always been seen as a very high-end solution in the marketplace. So we're trying to address a large portion of the market with one eye towards what we see as the larger vision, right? So we don't try trying to be maybe a little bit more democratic is the word about, how we approach the marketplace with it.